Endurance racing isn't for the weak-willed. It requires immense dedication, determination, and, well, endurance. It is a test of physical fortitude and durability of not only the cars, but also the drivers, and races that can range anywhere from 6, 12, or even 24 hours. Endurance racing has its origins in Italian motorsports, as many things do, with the Coppa Florio race taking place in 1900 in the northern Italian region of Lombardy. Countless 6, 12, and 24-hour endurance races have come and gone throughout the years, but without doubt the most famous is the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Le Mans was designed to present a different test than that of the Grand Prix racing that was the dominant form of motorsport throughout Europe. Instead of focusing on the ability of a car company to build the fastest machines, Le Mans would challenge manufacturers to make durable yet still plenty fast cars that would last the grueling 24 hours. Manufacturers happily complied with requests, showing up with their bright starry-eyed engineers to create what could only be described as the ultimate test track for the future of the automotive world. The reputation of the French track has lasted the test of time, as it is the oldest endurance race event still ongoing, having turned its first laps around the 8.5-mile long public-private Circuit de la Sarthe in 1923. And while Le Mans is a fan favorite among motorsports fans for many famous battles including Ford versus Ferrari and Porsche versus Audi, it unfortunately also holds the classification for the deadliest motor race in history. The 1955 event was held in great anticipation, as previous winners Ferrari, Jaguar, and Mercedes all arrived with brand new and improved cars. With the cloudless skies on June 11, 1955, between 250 and 300,000 fans tightly packed into the track to witness one of the most eagerly awaited races on the entire motorsports calendar. Ferrari was coming into the 23rd edition of the race, the reigning 24-hour champions, and the Tifosi back then were no less passionate than their modern counterparts of anything that dons the prancing horse and goes fast. To Jaguar, Le Mans was the center of the entire world, and every year they would throw all of their resources at winning, having won the 1953 and 54 editions of the race, and calling in future F1 champion Mike Hawthorne to head their 1955 effort to recapture it from Ferrari. Mercedes were no slouches themselves, bringing the new 300 SLR, which is rated by many experts as the best sports car in the world, with their fuel-injected 3-liter straight 8 being the most advanced engine on the grid, producing 300 horsepower, and sporting an ultra-lightweight magnesium alloy body. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for a future video regarding a very special 300 SLR Mercedes refused to sell for years. Team manager Alfred Neubauer assembled a multinational team for the race, pairing Juan Manuel Fangio and Sterling Moss as the lead car pairing, as if beating one of those two alone wasn't difficult enough. Neubauer's second team consisted of the two Mercedes F1 drivers, Carl Kling and Andre Simon, and the third team of John Fitch and Pierre Levegh. Dark horses Cunningham, Aston Martin, and Maserati also brought new 3-liter cars, and the excitement across the entire field was easily felt in the stands. As is tradition, the grid lined up for a 4 p.m. local start. Ferrari's Castellati, being near the front of the grid formation, was first under the Dunlop Bridge and led the first lap, followed by Hawthorne and his Jaguar. Fangio lagged behind due to a slow start caused by his pants leg snagging on a gear shift lever, but in short order worked his way up the grid to join the two front runners. By lap 4, the top 8 was exclusively filled by Mercedes, Ferrari, and Jaguar, and the fans' anticipations were being met as Castellati was keenly holding Hawthorne and Fangio behind him for the first hour of the race. After 70 minutes and a braking mistake by Castellati at the end of the Mulsanne Straight, the Ferrari and Jaguar were able to sneak past, dropping the Ferrari, and Hawthorne and Fangio turned an endurance race into a sprint, exchanging several lap records in the following hour. Hawthorne made it no secret that he was not a fan of the German manufacturer, and clearly and openly showed his hostility both on and off the track due to a close relative dying during World War II, adding just an extra bit of rivalry to the already heated contest. Everything was going great. Fans had front row seats to one of the best endurance races that had ever taken place. Fangio and Hawthorne continued to keep pace with one another, and Hawthorne set a lap record that was over 7 seconds faster than the lap record set in practice by Ferrari. As we approached the end of lap 35 around 6:20 p.m., the first pit stops of the race were coming due for all teams on the grid. Hawthorne was in a close battle with Fangio and had just lapped Levegh in 6th place and was determined to keep Fangio behind him for as long as possible. Hawthorne quickly came up and lapped Austin Healey of Lance Macklin, braking quickly after overtaking and pulled right across the track to pit entry. This caused Macklin to take evasive action, braking hard himself, getting off the right-hand edge of the track, throwing up dirt, and veering back to the center of the track. From Hawthorne's own testimony, he said that Macklin had seen him and had pulled over to the right to let him through, and that the advanced disc brakes on the Jaguar allowed Hawthorne to brake much quicker than Macklin was expecting. What is actually true about the specific piece of information has lived in controversy since the moment it occurred. Independent of the cause of Macklin's situation, instinctive reaction, loss of control due to change in road surfaces, his own brakes operating unevenly, being surprised at Hawthorne's stopping distance, his car became a weapon as it shot across the track briefly out of control. Macklin ended up being directly in the path of the fast-approaching LeVeg, who was intent on completing another lap directly in front of Fangio, patiently waiting to pass. LeVeg had no time to evade the Austin Healey. The front right wheel of his Mercedes rode up onto the rear left corner of Macklin's car, acting as a ramp, sending the Silver Arrow flying into the air over spectators and rolling end over end for 260 feet. LeVeg was thrown from his tumbling car, hitting the ground and crushing his skull upon impact, as there were no seatbelts equipped, as drivers reasoned that it would be better to be thrown clear in a collision rather than be crushed or trapped in a burning car. LeVeg is rumored to have, as his final action, raised his hand to warn Fangio behind him, who shut his eyes and squeezed through the carnage, brushing Hawthorne's then stationary Jaguar in the pits. The title of this video does not relate to the drivers, but rather to the spectators of this particular crash. Due to the momentum of the 120-mile-an-hour impact, the heaviest components of the car, engine block, radiator, and front suspension, hurtled straight into the crowd for 330 feet, crushing all in their path. The hood of the SLR sliced through the air, decapitating tightly jammed spectators like a guillotine, and fans who had climbed onto ladders and scaffolding to get a better view found themselves directly in the path of the devastating debris. What was left of LeVeg's car lay on the embankment ablaze after the rear-mounted fuel tank exploded, showering spectators with white-hot embers. The SLR had a high magnesium content, and rescue workers unfamiliar with magnesium fires poured water onto the flames, intensifying the fire, causing it to burn for several hours. Jaguar driver Duncan Hamilton, who was watching from pit wall, recounted that the scene on the other side of the road was indescribable. The dead and dying were everywhere. The cries of pain, anguish, and despair screamed catastrophe. I stood as if in a dream, too horrified to even think. And if the devastation inflicted by the Mercedes wasn't enough, Macklin's car, heavily damaged, rammed the left side barrier, veering right into pit lane, narrowly missing multiple refueling cars, then running down a police officer, photographer, and 2 officials, all 4 seriously injured, with all surviving including Macklin after he jumped out of the wreckage. The following lap, Hawthorne pit, staggered out of the car distraught, admitted that he had caused the collision and following devastation. While all this was happening in Jaguar's pits, John Finch, LeVeg's American co-driver, was standing on pit road with LeVeg's wife Denise, both seeing the entire incident unfold and her husband's severely burned body laying in full view for a considerable amount of time. Fitch, worried that his family would find out about the news prior to him informing them that he was okay, ran to find a phone and overheard a reporter confirming 48 confirmed deaths. Fitch, realizing the PR nightmare the incident would cause, hastily ran back to the pits, urging Neubauer to withdraw from the race, to which he'd already come to the same conclusion. Unfortunately for them both, neither had the authority to make such a decision, as they needed approval from the Mercedes company directors, who after an emergency vote via phone from Stuttgart, Germany, approved the team's withdrawal just before midnight. Neubauer waited until 1:45 a.m. when many spectators had left to step onto the track and quietly called his cars into the pits as they ran first and third, with the Mercedes packed and gone by morning. Mercedes attempted to convince Jaguar to withdraw out of respect for the victims, to which team manager Lofty England declined. Hawthorne and company would go on to win the race 5 laps ahead of the second-place Aston Martin team, with Hawthorne causing controversy after a podium photo was taken of him smiling and drinking the victor's bottle of champagne. All told, 83 spectators plus LeVeg were killed, and at least 120 other spectators had varying levels of non-fatal injuries, with some observers estimating the total to be much greater than reported, and a special mass was held the following morning in the Le Mans Cathedral for the first funerals. The deaths led to an immediate temporary ban on motorsports in France, Spain, Switzerland, West Germany, and several other countries until racetracks could be brought up to a higher level of safety. Most countries would lift their bans within the year. Switzerland, on the other hand, was not quick to lift the ban, after debates in the Federal Assembly in 2001 and 2009, only partially relaxing the ban for electric vehicles in 2015, and hosting their first circuit race since the Le Mans disaster in 2018 for the Zurich Prix. Ferrari and Jaguar went on to race each other in countless events throughout the years, while Mercedes withdrew completely from racing after the race, finally returning after a 33-year hiatus in 1988.